I would like to tell my viewers today that I and my husband, we want to buy a car. Now, my children are saying that go ahead with a automatic car without that clutch, and we are very old school. You want to buy with the clutch, but that whole decision, to buy or not to buy, they are asking me to say a yes or a no. It gets very difficult because old generation, new thoughts, old thoughts. So was it also very difficult for you? Because my thing is, inside these four walls, you go outside, meet so many people. Was it also difficult to say a yes or a no?
Yes, always, because especially when you're working in a team and a collective, and you have people who have very strong, passionate views about why a yes or why a no, and that people are coming with the right intention. I think if you're doubtful about people's intention, then you can kind of say, okay, I'll ignore that view. But when you know that it's coming with the right intention, with the commitment, then it is hard to kind of say. And that I realized that at the end of the day, that was what the nature of leadership is, and being a leader is to be able to at those points make those calls, and have to say. And if you don't make those calls, then things just slide, and when things slide and decisions aren't made, it just creates dysfunction. It creates inefficiency, it creates people feeling exhausted, because actually people are doing things, you're not clearing a pathway for people to work, for people's creative energy to flow. So those were some of the big learnings for me, to be able to say, to be able to cut through at some point and take a call and make a decision around something and say, okay, we're going to do this, regardless of whatever else is happening. I think one of the things for me, which was very important, and a lot of my colleagues, even in the leadership team, used to battle me on it, but I was absolutely, I had such a deep conviction about it that I was, it was very clear for me that it had to be done, and which was what I called, and what we called, the institution building process, which was, I truly believe that if we were going to create change outside, and we were talking about change outside, we had to grapple with change inside, and that change has to be inside out. So we have to work first with what needs to change in us before we can even talk to anybody or facilitate change outside. So that to me was one of the leadership principles that I worked with. And so our leadership process was a lot of, we did a lot of what we call process work around helping the leadership team themselves to understand themselves better, understand each other better, how we function, what was blocking us from really being able to do what we needed to do. So that self-reflective process is hard. Not everybody is used to it, and some people were coming from the corporate sector where they had done none of that. So the first time they're coming in and there's this self-reflection happening, and people are crying and people are emotional, and they're saying, like, where have we come? What is this place? What is happening here? I came to do a job. What is all this rona dhona happening here, and so there was a lot of resistance to that, even from some of the older people in CRI. Like, why do we need to do this emotional stuff? Let's just get on with our jobs. But for me, I was very clear that was essential. Unless we were able to bring that part of ourselves, our emotional selves, the passion that we felt, unless we were able to really build our own empathy for ourselves and for others, it was going to be very difficult for us to lead any kind of change.
Men and women, they become different kind of leaders. So women are more, what do you call that, emotional. So you also take your decisions emotionally, or how is the thought process?
I think I'd have answered this question a little differently maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I think I'm answering it differently now because I've just seen people in different roles, and whether in leadership or different kinds of organizations, and I feel it's actually person dependent. Yes, broadly one can say women bring in or are more comfortable with the emotional part of themselves, and men with the rational. But I've come to realize that's almost an artificial division, or a kind of bordering on stereotyping, because I think that people are different. And I have seen and I've experienced women who are much more comfortable with their IQ and bringing that dimension, their intellectual might into work, and less comfortable bringing their emotional side into work. You know, in my own working environment, and I've seen, on the other hand, I've seen men with very, very comfortable with their EQ and bringing that in, you know, fully. So I think the more I live and experience life, I think it's really about how people come into roles and how they perform them. One, also I think it's dependent also on the culture of the organization, you know, and actually what's the environment, what is encouraged in that organization, you know. So if within the organization, whether it's a corporate organization or even in the social sector, I've seen enough organizations and some of the finest organizations working internationally on human rights and at the forefront of the human rights work, and yet absolutely internally violating a whole set of rights of people, you know, and absolutely no EQ, you know. And this is in the development sector. A lot of the leadership there are women as well. So I think the more I'm experiencing life, I think that it's dependent on the people and what their orientation to life, perhaps what their environment was in how they have grown up, and what has been valued for them as they grew up, you know, and what is the environment of the organization and what is the organization value, you know, and then in that different things flourish. So if there is value and there's a recognition that you need the emotional and the rational, there's no way I made decisions purely emotionally. If I'd made only emotional decisions, I'd have made not very good decisions for CRY. And if I'd made purely, you know, rational, logical decisions, I'd have made not very good decisions for CRY. The good decisions I believe that I did make was when I brought the two together. You know, when I brought that sense of what are the values, what is it that I truly believe, what are the not just the emotions but the values more than anything else that are essential to what is required for the work, and how do I bring my rational, logical mind to bear on how this will then, what shape it will take. I needed both, and they were essential to making good decisions. And so I find it a little difficult to compartmentalize these things, both within myself, but also to kind of say this set of people do this and that set of people do that. I think it's a little more nuanced and more intricate than that.
But you agree that you have been emotional?
Of course I've been emotional. I'm human, so I will be emotional. But I'm saying there have been times when I've had to set my emotion aside. Yeah, and to say, yes, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling terrible about the situation. For example, particularly in a situation where I've had to ask a person to leave, you know, and it's a person that I have worked with, that I, you know, really, I really liked, yeah. But there were reasons that I had to ask that person to leave. My emotional side was saying, don't, you know, I have to think about all of these things, and yet the part of me which was the value part of me, and I had to bring both my logic, my rational, my emotional, my values all together to make that decision.
Yeah, because even when I have to, okay, I also lay off my mates, but when I have to lay off, no, it's a tension.
It's a trauma,
I get very emotionally attached. No, so many years you're working, but you're not doing a good job.
Yeah.
So I have to.
Yes.
So when you lay off, do they come to you? Because my mates, they come to me and they'll be like, Bodhi, what happened, this, that, and then they'll talk about their problems.
Yes.
Do people also come to you and...
Oh, of course, my God. Those processes have never been easy for any of us in CRY, whether it was asking a person to leave or having to withdraw from a project that we were supporting, you know. But particularly when you're asking a person to leave, because that's really tough. You have to create that space for whatever that person's response, reaction, to hear that, to help that person also kind of stabilize and go, because that person has to move on, you know. that person has to continue to work or support themselves, etc. So you want to be able to do it in a way that, yes, it hasn't worked out here, but that doesn't mean this is the end of your working life or it's the end of life. Or, you have to be able to take what some things might have gone wrong here, but how can you transform, how can you learn from that and make sure that in the next place that you go to, or whatever you do, but particularly if it's around performance, that you can do something different. So to be able to do that as best as you can, I mean, you can't take away the pain of losing a job, but as best as you can to be able to support that person, we would do.